is nice. So we'll see if we can't get started and get folks out of here a little bit ahead of our schedule. Welcome. This is a meeting that I had asked to bring together to start having some discussions about the future of our downtown and future plans for the downtown, and see where we can start actually putting some goals out there. As many of you know, our downtown's gone through an amazing transformation in the last few years. Much of that thankful to some of our investors and folks here in the core itself, who continue to this day to do some improvements. One of the things that I heard about for quite a while was, now that we're done with phase 2, when do we kick off, or now that we're done with phase 1, when do we kick off phase 2? And I know some of the merchants, there were some discussions a few years ago about phase 2s and where we get to and that type of thing. But I think for the most part, from a staff level, we've yet to even find documentation of phase 2. So I'm going to chalk that one up to a lot of folks had some visionary ideas and some thoughts and some different things happening, but got caught up in things going and things didn't exactly get to that point. So hopefully today is the start of a number of these meetings to, in fact, put together what could be a phase 2 for our downtown development and continuing to see the downtown area grow from River Road out to 32nd. So it will. We've got a little bit of an agenda this morning to go through to talk about where we've been. We've invited Wes Hickey here from Lone Wolf Development and Charlie Bishop from Pendleton Woolen Mills, two of our largest landowners in the downtown core, to pick their brains a little bit. And then we also want to pick the brains and the thoughts of all of you in the audience as well, and talk about downtown in general and where you would like to see it go and what you like about it or what we need to work on improving. So we're going to start out with our Community Development Director, Mitch Knipe. And Mitch cleans up very well. He walked in from baseball coaching a few minutes ago in shorts and a t-shirt. Said he was going to, as long as we started this at 1:30, he'd have time to change clothes. I didn't know this is what, or we could have started at 1:05. But Mitch, can you lead us through a little bit of where we've been, what the current town center plan is, and what our codes call for, and what we've done along those lines?
Absolutely, and thank you everybody again for being here. I joke with Dave that, you know, baseball we have a uniform, and at work I have a uniform as well. So I thank you for allowing me the time to change my clothes. It just helps me feel better. Really quick, what we're going to talk about today, kind of the downtown. Just really 3 moments in time: history, where we are today, and then, as Sean said, we'll have a discussion about where we go in the future. So history. We have a lot here. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. I'm going to fast forward just a couple of years to 1999. The City Council at that time adopted a vision for the downtown. That vision started with a preamble that downtown Washougal is the historical center of our city and entry to the Columbia River Gorge to be cherished and nurtured. So based on that vision adoption, the City Council started work on a downtown Washougal revitalization plan. That revitalization plan had significant public input. There were stakeholder interviews, there was some market analysis done, some SWOT analysis done. You can see the community vision and planning workshops, preferred scenario workshops. This was all led at the time by the Planning Commission. They actually had 3 workshops at that time, and as you'll see, there was a lot more workshops as they moved through the process. The action plan out of that downtown revitalization plan had these 7 actions. 1, continue downtown improvements. 2, facilitate investments by downtown business and property owners. 3, encourage residential upgrading and new construction. 4, to attract employers to Washougal's downtown. 5, cluster vibrant retail with distinct downtown districts. And assemble a toolkit of city incentives for downtown revitalization. And last, to monitor the performance, then update the strategy in response to changed conditions and opportunities. This is what that plan, that downtown revitalization plan, implemented. 7 distinct districts within the downtown. The historic development, historic downtown in the purple there, which is roughly corresponds to the north portion of our core right now. Historic residential, we had mixed use. You'll notice the transportation element had a road running through the middle there, connection of Addy Street with A Street. But what was interesting is what they did at that time is they just adopted, and I'm sorry it's hard to see, it's Ordinance 1478. This was their implementation, and I know it's hard to read up there, but what it says is amending Washougal Municipal Code Chapter 18 to establish historic downtown commercial overlay zoning regulations and to implement the city's adopted downtown revitalization plan. So this was in February of 2004 that they adopted this, but they didn't change any of the zoning. The zoning all stayed the same. There was a commercial, general commercial designation, there was a mixed-use designation, there was industrial designations, but it all got this historic overlay district over the top. That historic district sets forward some design guidelines, some pretty stringent ones actually. That required, even if you're painting your building, you had to go through the design standards in order to look at it, in order to accomplish the repainting of your building. Again, a lot of work went into that though. I mean, up to that point with that plan, public input, again, at the time of that adoption. I think it says on there that there was again in 2003 and twice in 2003 workshops with Planning Commission at that time. Moving forward a little bit, and I'm not exactly sure of what happened in that time period. That was February of 2004 when that historic downtown. I came to the city in July of 2005. So from February to July, February of 2004 to July of 2005, this historic overlay was in place. But they were by the time I got here in 2005, they were already well on their way talking about this change to the downtown, the town center designations, and what that would mean. The city council brought in an architectural firm out of Seattle known as LMN Architects, and they worked on not only design standards, but also new designations for the downtown. During that same time period, again, continuing with that action plan that was originally identified within the downtown revitalization plan, the city, that number one, was making improvements, continued to make improvements to the downtown. So the city kept on doing that. Took out a $6 million bond for downtown street improvements, which we're still paying for now. About $4 million still left owing on that. Again, a little bit later, but we worked on the pedestrian tunnel under SR 14. And we're continuing to explore parking options within the downtown. We've had conversations at the staff level about some temporary off-site parking, getting signage downtown. Kind of anecdotally, we've heard of some parking problems, so we want to make sure that we've identified parking that's off the main, but with accurate signage to direct people off the main street up to those parking and be able to move downtown. So that kind of, all that public input, again, still building off that revitalization plan, implementation of the historic downtown, which in my opinion really didn't work, didn't really get at what they were after. But then we get to today, and again, adopted in 2005, but is the town center designations. So that's where I'm going to spend the majority of this time with. It's important to remember what those proposed land use regulations and what the purpose of. What I'm talking about here in this whole segment has all been codified into city code. So there are some changes, and if I'll point out some, but for the most part, all of these slides that I'm looking at now, these are the ones that have nice pretty pictures on it and you can see it. It's all been codified into our existing city code, chapter 18.35, our town center designations. So real quick, the proposed land use regulations, the overall purpose for the town center districts was to create a distinct, strong identity for the town center, producing a heart for Washougal that is surrounded by solid, strong neighborhoods. provide opportunities to increase the city's tax base, thereby helping to fund public improvements and public services, to encourage private and public investment, attract shoppers and visitors, and appeal to existing and new residents, to produce a concentration and a mixture of commercial, office, retail, residential, and civic uses within the town center, to develop a town center that supports pedestrian movement, bicycles, and use of public transit, to promote sustainable public and private development, to implement both the city's comprehensive plan and downtown plan. And at adoption, we actually added one more in relationship to Pendleton. We put a purpose statement in there that recognized Pendleton as a strong business within our community, the largest employer, and it actually set out protections for any of the uses that they're doing, allowed for their expansion, basically it allowed them to facilitate to continue to doing business as usual. So this is what we're dealing with. Now, the downtown revitalization plan, if you remember from the map, only dealt, oh, I'm sorry, get that, those are the acreage there, but it only dealt with this area. The town center East Village and the town center core. That's all that the downtown revitalization plan dealt with. When town centers designations came forward, we brought in the residential element too, the West Village. So we're almost 200 acres that we're dealing with in the downtown core. It's bounded by SR 14 on the south, the railroad tracks on the north, approximately 8th Street on the west, and 32nd Street on the east. I apologize, these are so small, I didn't realize that they were gonna, they look fine on my computer, but
No, they look pretty small on the
well,
computer.
I still need my glasses when I look at them, but real quick, town center, the core, it's the highest intense uses, especially retail, office. East Village, a mixture of high density housing and retail, and then West Village is obviously, that's the residential portion of the core. Use limitations. Now, this is where the downtown and the town center really differ from every other designation that we have in the city. Normal use designations, use tables, it's just the zoning code lists the uses and you got to find your use on that table, and if you're there, great, you can do business. If you're not, then you don't get to go there. What we did in the town center is we said everything is allowed. You can do whatever, except for these specific limitations. I won't go into them all, but in all the districts, adult establishments, billboards, industrial uses, again with the exception of our Pendleton, outdoor storage materials, repair of vehicles, sewage treatment plants, you get the idea. Some of those things that we don't really want in a downtown. We additionally prohibited some things in the core, vehicle washing, gas stations, mini storage, outdoor sales. And in the West Village, retail or office or commercial. We said in the West Village, that's the residential portion. We don't want offices and retail over there. You'll notice on, if you can see, that there was two prohibitions on here that didn't actually get adopted. One, they were size limitations on buildings within the core. Originally, we had there was a 40,000 square foot size limitation in the town center core and a 60,000 square foot size limitation in East Village. Those were not codified. Basic development standards, and again, I know I'm going over this. I think this is there's a lot to it, but this really is what drives the core and what in far of uses and what we look at when something comes in the core. You have your basic development standards, again, all codified. I'm not going to get into a lot of this, but you know, floor area ratios, how much building you can actually put on a piece of property. We look at both residential and commercial. We have bonus features that if you do these certain things, you can actually get higher floor area ratios. So you can build more building in order to accommodate your use. Street level retail, public plaza, canopies, daycares, health, all these things that, and this list has actually been added to, there's some more uses that have been added to that allow you to get a larger building if you so chose. Maximum building height, parking ratios, very general stuff we're dealing with when projects come in. Street types we also addressed within the core. We had three distinct street types. We had vehicular-oriented streets, we had pedestrian-oriented streets, and neighborhood streets. The pedestrian-oriented, you can see up here it says, actually says a 5-foot wide sidewalk What we ended up adopting was a 6 to a 10, so we actually, that pedestrian-oriented street, we wanted a wider sidewalk, obviously, for pedestrians. So we bumped that up at time of accommodation. The city council adopted that. But we were very specific about, you know, what streets we were going to be looking at and what we wanted. You can see the black and white dots on the map there. Those are pedestrian-oriented streets. That's Main and C Street were to be pedestrian-oriented. Again, on the east side, you had more vehicular-oriented streets. And you'll notice here this additional pedestrian-oriented street shall be designated in this area once a new street pattern has been adopted. It's actually still on our current transportation capital facility plan for an extension of A Street over to Addy, which roughly through there and scoop down. Much similar to that first map that we were looking at. So again, those have been identified there for future circulation within the downtown core and East Village. Not going to spend a lot of time. We had very specific definitions within the core that we added that are only applicable to the core, and so we had those in there as well. And then we get to site design, and this is really where the rubber hits the road, if you will, in the town center. Again, if you recall, anything is allowed, so we want, you know, anything to come in here unless you're prohibited, but we're going to hold you to a high design standard, and that's where these came into play. I'm not going to go through all of these, but what I think is important, what I will touch on, is the intent of each one of these sections. Again, these are all codified. So when I worked this through Planning Commission, I think Councilman Greenlee and Councilman Shoemaker were on the Planning Commission at that time. We spent a lot of time on intent. We didn't move on until we were all in agreement on what intent was. Because if we weren't in agreement on the intent, then the standards weren't going to mean anything. We had to be clear on what the intent was. So once we did that, then it was a lot easier to get to those standards. So sidewalks, intent to provide safe, comfortable sidewalks that encourage walking. So we put standards in place that would facilitate that. Street trees, the intent was to support the natural setting as fundamental to the character of Washougal. Street furnishings, intent to reinforce a cohesive image and simplify maintenance and replacement. Plazas, courtyards, and seating areas to provide a variety of open space. Pedestrian lighting to reinforce a cohesive image and simplify maintenance and replacement. Screening of trash and service areas. The intent was to screen trash and service areas from public view. Curb cuts. The intent was to maintain a continuous sidewalk by minimizing driveway access. So there's standards in place that try to look at joint driveways and things like that to continue at one cohesive sidewalk. Drive-through lanes. The intent was to reduce the vehicle pedestrian conflicts and improve the pedestrian environment. We talked about where we wanted parking, location. The intent was to reduce the visual impact of parking and enhance the pedestrian experience. In parking lot landscaping, the intent was to reduce the visual impact of surface parking lots. If you really desired having more parking out there, okay, well, we would try to look at that, but if you're going to do it, we're requiring a higher degree of landscaping associated with that, really to screen it, because we want it to be a pedestrian oriented in the core there. Parking lot lighting, the intent was to improve safety and reduce light pollution. Pedestrian connections within parking lots, in the intent to create a network of safe and attractive linkages for pedestrians. Again, building design, building set to back of sidewalk. The intent to reinforce an active pedestrian experience along pedestrian-oriented streets. You can see that the Washougal Town Center, right up to the back of the sidewalk. That's right where it be. It continues down the street. We want them right up there. The entrances, the intent was to ensure that entrances are easily identifiable and accessible from streets and sidewalk. And transparency, the intent was to provide a visual connection between activities inside and outside of buildings. So a lot of windows. We want that indoor, outdoor kind of look going on there. Massing and articulation, the intent was to reduce the apparent bulk of multi-story buildings and maintain pedestrian scale. our ground level details to reinforce the character of the streetscape. There's several things, elements that you, as a development comes in, that they have to pick, and they have to utilize at least 3 of those in order to move that project forward. Roof lines. Ensure roof lines present a distinct profile and appearance for the building and express the neighborhood character. Screening rooftop equipment. Screen rooftop mechanical and communications equipment from the ground level of nearby streets and residential use areas. We have blank wall treatments. Screening of parking structures, again, to reduce these blank walls and parking structures, to do different things along those to break up that large facade. Sign design, we got into that. Creativity, the intent was to encourage interesting, creative, and unique approaches to the design of signage. We also looked at historic signage to preserve the unique character of the town center. And again, we got the fine food tavern there, a picture, and again, keeping those things that are already here. Pedestrian-oriented signs, to provide signs that complement and strengthen the pedestrian realm. And then ground signs, to ensure that signs are not principally oriented to automobile traffic. So we have standards there. So I know that's a lot to run through, but in a day-to-day activity of reviewing projects, those are all the things that we run down and have to make adequate findings that those things are being achieved. These were adopted by this ordinance, 1547. It was adopted in May of 2006. And I know you can't see it, but again, the public input and the meetings that we had on this. The third whereas is there was a joint planning commission that was held on April 7th of 2006, but the planning commission work session, there was June 14th of 2005, July 12th of 2005, August 9th of 2005, September 13th of 2005, and October 11th of 2005. So that's 6 total work sessions that we spent going through this. There was a lot of time and effort, public input into development of those standards, and that's what we have in place today. And I think that it continues. I think we're seeing the fruits of that as we look downtown. I think that the question now is in looking at the core is what our future is going to be, and where we, going back to that revitalization plan, reaching back to it, the action plan that it had, reviewing what we did, what we've done, what we continue to do, and how we move forward. So with that, I'll turn it back to Sean.
How has it worked? You're our principal planner and our professional planner. Is it?
I think that I've had the privilege to talk to Wes on a number of occasions, and the last time that we were talking, the idea was, what else have we, new construction-wise, that has come in the core? And we haven't had it. Wes has been the one that's, done that, and I was fortunate that the consultants that Wes hired looked at this, very well. There was very little that I had to start tweaking and pushing on or anything like that. And if you recall, the Washougal Town Square was the first building that was constructed utilizing these standards, and it was right at the same time that we were doing the downtown improvements, and which I think, given the underground parking, it was critical that the timing of those things worked together. So the standards in place, I think that they will get there. I think it's just a matter of who's going to walk through the door. But I think that there's in addition to those standards, there's the procedural side that's been set up in design review that gives the director a pretty broad discretion to make sure that all the intent and the purpose of those town centers are achieved anytime that a development comes into town. I think that one of the other things that we've talked about is that in the future, as things get going a little bit better, maybe putting something in place that we have an actual committee for design review that would be charged with reviewing and making sure that any project that comes in continues to meet that intent, and allowing us to set back a little bit, if you will, and because sometimes they conflict with each other. You may have something that, you know, I need parking here, but the building's got to come up. And so you got to go back to the intent, you got to go back to the purpose, and then something will give in that. And really finding what is best and what continues to meet the purpose as we move forward. I think it's a good code. I really do. And I think that it grew out of a good plan. I think of the public working on it. Again, not being here when they did historic downtown overlay, all I know is when I got here, I didn't enjoy working with that code. It was cumbersome at best. But I think that what we have now in place really allows us to get at what we want. And again, the other thing I'll go back to at the Planning Commission level is what we said and what we talked about is trying to put it in place that people could look at it, design, and we could really stay out of the way. Just let it, you know, let the people come in. How are they going to do it? Meet those standards, and we're not going to quibble over a lot of stuff. But you've got to hit those things. You don't hit those things, we're going to have a lot of conversations. Fortunately, with the development we've had, we haven't had a lot of conversations about that.
Questions from council members? Kind of gets us to where we are today and the rules that we're living under now, but any questions as far as any of the thought processes that went through to get us there, any of the intents?
Let me just ask.
Go ahead.
You said that basically anything is allowed in downtown so long as it's not prohibited.
Correct.
Basically, it's kind of the reverse of a typical zoning
Yes,
ordinance
it is.
where you have allowed uses and everything else is prohibited. In this case, everything's allowed unless it's prohibited. What kind of things are prohibited?
Well, the adult establishments, billboards, industrial uses, outdoor storage. Again, you get to the core, or those are necessarily in the core. In the core itself, there's drive-through, gas stations, things like that. There is one code change that we're processing right now, which will be an additional prohibition within the core, and that's monopoles, cell tower. We don't want to. We already have one tower within. We don't want another tower going up within the core.
Repairs of vehicles unless they're completely inside of buildings, sewage treatment plants.
Yep.
It's a good thing to keep those out of downtown.
Yeah.
Work release facilities, wrecking yards.
Halfway houses.
Yeah, there's actually another. There's under the discretion. It's any other use that does not meet the purpose or intent of the district. So that's where we still have discretion. That if it's not on there, but it's something that, well, no, that doesn't hit what we want, we still have that discretion to say no.
Yeah, there are additionally in here in the downtown core itself, which we're sitting in, like Mitch mentioned, the vehicle washing unless located inside, drive-through businesses unless located within the building itself, gasoline service stations, mini storages at street level, and outdoor sales of boats, vehicles, and equipment. So it leaves it open for quite a bit more. Paul?
I was just going to add a little context, mostly to say how hard that Mitch worked with the Planning Commission to get this through. Admittedly, when this came before us, we had this kind of overall intent of understanding that what we wanted was an attractive, walkable downtown. And the design standards came out, and I think the initial reaction of Planning Commission was, what in the world does needing a cornice between the first story and the second story have to do with that? But then as we spent time on it and started to look at the pictures of what a straight wall looks like 3 stories high, as opposed to one that has architectural breaks at each story. And that's just a single example that Mitch led us through with great care. And I just wanted to say that with all of the detail that came up in the presentation, when that came up in Planning Council, I think we kind of, Planning Commission, I think our eyes kind of glazed over and we weren't really excited about it. But then once we worked through it, it all began to make sense. And so you know, if you want, there is some, aren't there some pictures in the
Yeah, no,
municipal code?
you know, that was the other conversation that Wes and I had, and actually Sean too, when we were talking about this, and that's why I used this one, because it had, as Sean quote, the pretty pictures in it. We didn't, and I think that's probably something that we need to go back and take a look at, and why we didn't. When we updated our commercial designations, we put all kinds of pictures in there. But we did that after we did the town center. So that's one of those things that we look at now and then. You know, picture's worth 1,000 words, and it really kind of gets at what you're after. So we talked about going back and maybe putting some of those back in there.
For those of you who are actually interested in this kind of thing, if you go to the city website, under e-government, there's a pull down that says Washougal Municipal Code. If you go there, 18, section 18 is zoning, and 1835 is the downtown core, or town center. The immediately preceding section has a lot of pictures in it that will give you some of the kind of context for the things that are discussed here in the design standards and all of those kinds of things. So if you're really interested in that kind of thing, it is there. You just have to know where to look for it. That's all. Thanks.
Other questions of council? I'm going to take a risk here, just because, again, I want to make sure that everybody in the audience as well understands where we're at. Questions from audience members in regards to the downtown and what we've got into current zoning and expectations? It's a quiet group. Okay,
I'll ask a question.
Molly.
I just want to know if there is, since you talked about streamlining permitting, and it's a little bit off topic, but can you tell me if a small business wanted to come into town, how long it would take for them to get permitted to start, you know, before they could actually put a shovel in the ground?
That's a thank you, Molly. That's a good question, especially for the core. The other thing that you'll notice about this, as opposed to other districts, is there's no conditional uses. So nothing requires a public hearing to go through a conditional use. It's either permitted or it's not. And unlike the commercial designations, where you may have some uses that you have to go through a public hearing, which adds to your time and it adds to process. So the core doesn't have any, or the town center, excuse me, doesn't have any of those uses. You're permitted or you're not. In terms of site plan, right now, that's one of the things that we did when the state bumped up SEPA level exemptions. So State Environmental Policy Act requires that buildings, where it was, we've bumped it up citywide, but initially it was just in the core. We said if you're going to do a building it used to say 4,000 square feet. Anything larger than that, you had to go through SEPA, which adds at least probably a month onto your time frame. And so we raised those levels up to 12,000 square feet, so you could do a building that's 12,000. One of the other things that we've talked about is that State Department of Ecology has bumped those levels up again for office and retail to 30,000 square feet, industrial uses 40,000 square feet. So we're talking about moving those SEPA levels up again. That would keep you out, even if you want to do a bigger building. Type 1 site plan review, I'll tell you, code 28 days to process it. Type 2s are 78 days to process. We don't usually take that long to get your initial staff report out, and then you start getting into final site work, engineering, and then that's the lobbying back and forth. But it's you know, we pride ourselves really, especially in the business community, to moving quick. Actually, in any community, residential either.
David?
I remain concerned, as I was when you and Paul and I worked together on the planning commission, about the anti-automobile tenor of the plans that we have. And I know that a great deal of that is forced on us by the state of Washington. I'm concerned about it at that level too, and I'm doing what I can to change that. But I don't think that the automobile is going to move off the stage as the primary means of transportation for the people of Washougal anytime in the near future, and I'm talking about decades. This is one reason why I particularly like the underground parking that you've got. I think that's terrific, and it meets all the standards. It's off-street. You don't need all the shrubbery and everything. It's taken care of. I use that facility when I go to the Hearth. It's great. I can walk in. It rains a little bit in Washougal, I found out. I can walk in out of the rain to get there. I think it's wonderful. And that's my concern, is that we not build a downtown area that is so dependent upon other modes of transportation that people with automobiles won't go there. Because I think that is and will remain for the foreseeable future the dominant mode of transportation in Washougal.
I don't think the plan forecloses the automobile at all. What it does do is it creates, especially within the core, just more pedestrian-friendly avenues, if you will. And again, as we talked about, that we're looking at creating other parking options. West, like as you mentioned, has a nice parking. Obviously, Charlie Pendleton has a nice parking lot down there too. But within the core itself, we need to do some more about looking at creating off main parking options. We want to look at utilizing this parking here, sign it, put signs down on Main Street to direct people that, so if they're driving downtown and everything's taken on Pendleton or on Main Street, excuse me, or Pendleton, that there's another option that they get to within a block's walking distance. So.
Well, I subscribe to the goal that you've got of a beautiful downtown area, and I think we're making progress in that area. And I think the contribution that you've made is terrific. I think it is the major contribution to a very nice downtown area. And I appreciate your working with me on the parking issue when we were on the Planning Commission, because that was a major bugaboo.
Yeah.
And we altered that a little bit to ease up some of the restrictions on that. And I think that was a good move.
And that it was a different time too. I mean, there was a different direction of the city. A very green, sustainable was the buzzwords at the time, and so I mean, we battled through that, but I think we still got something out of it that protects all those things. But it's not an overriding,
I think it's
agenda, if you will.
It's a terrific goal,
Mm-hmm.
as long as it doesn't dominate everything we do.
Yeah, I think we need to continue to encourage some of those things when they make sense and when they're viable for developments that may happen. At the same time, I don't know that 2 years ago we would have thought that we've got a parking problem in downtown Washougal. We would have been begging to have a parking problem in downtown Washougal. Now, because of some of the changes that have happened, a lot of the successes that Wes and Adam have had in the new buildings and that type of stuff. Certainly amnesia going in. I was in downtown for quite a while yesterday and was talking to a number of different businesses about just the uptick in not only vehicles, but people walking around, people being here that nobody has seen before. And these are merchants and folks who have been here forever. So things are happening, but at the same time, we've got some streets that are configured in ways that aren't exactly parking friendly. Some of our incentives allows you to build more building and encourage more people or more workers, at the same time having a little bit less parking as one of the trade-offs. And we've had this discussion at council level before. I think that that's one of the things that we need to start getting involved in now, with some sort of parking management and parking plans in order to pick that side up, because we're eliminating space downtown. Every time we put down a parking lot, we're eliminating that potentially for businesses, but our downtown is certainly limited, and it's got some barriers. We can only go from so far to so far, and as we try and be as friendly as we can and allowing businesses and bigger buildings and different uses and that type of stuff, I think part of it that's still going to be left to us is a large component of that parking, which is okay.
You mentioned young Adam over there, whose last name eludes me at the moment.
Mr. Taylor, he's right back here.
Oh, great. he strikes me as a blessing to this city. He's a one-man economic development agency. I think it's wonderful.
Just I guess one point I'd like to make on the parking, and just kind of shows the progression of that. The historic district, when it was there, it said that if on-street parking is insufficient, then you got to do on-site parking. So if you had enough parking for your business, you built a building, and there was enough parking on the street, you didn't have to do any more parking. So that was totally no parking. So we've moved from totally no parking, on-site parking, to at least now we have some parking, or making some accommodations for parking. And now we're having a parking problem.
It's a good problem to have, but it's still a problem.
Yes?
Any other questions or clarifications for the audience? Okay, won't be your last opportunity.
Sean?
Yes.
A quick question. Is that parking problem affecting you? Are people using your lot?
We've got a lot of space, but we are seeing people parking and accessing the pedestrian tunnel.
Okay.
We also get quite a bit of parking, I think, for the Bigfoot. That's
And the Hearth.
Usually at night when we don't have as many employees working. So far we still have plenty of space.
Thank you for your generosity.
So Charlie and Wes, not to put you, either one of you, on the spot, but obviously you're a couple of the largest owners of land available, and in addition to some of the newest additions in the downtown as far as infrastructure and buildings themselves. Thoughts from you two about future, thoughts of what you would like to see us moving towards, thoughts of what you have for any of your properties?
Okay. Well,
And this is only meant to be the start of conversations, so.
okay, I thought when you invited me to come today, I made me reflect back on the city's efforts to revitalize downtown. And so I went back a little further than Mitch did.
I don't know, he had Washougal Woolen Mills up there.
Yeah,
There was-
he did.
That's back a long ways.
Yeah, and we go back, we just celebrated our 100th anniversary in Washougal last summer. And Washougal is very important to our company. Washougal is our primary textile mill, where we do most of our fabric manufacturing. We have a very important mill store that's part of our retail operations, and very important. The mill is also very important for branding and for us to connect with our customers. And a lot of our customers are very interested in knowing where their products are made, how they're made, how the quality is built into those products. And being able to come to Washougal, take a mill tour, go through the mill is really an important part of our operation. We also have been fortunate, we've had a lot of television programs and things come through the mill. Martha Stewart was here, Cliff Clavin, all sorts of different television people have come through. Every once in a while I'll go through an airport late at night and I'll watch one of our videos kind of circling through. So it's very important for that. And also Washougal has really been a very good place for us to do business. We've got a great workforce. We've got very skilled, dedicated, hardworking people. We currently employ about 200 people, and it's pretty amazing, but I think about 45 of those people have been working at the mill for over 25 years. And that's an amazing statistic when you get that kind of support from your employees, and we rely on them heavily. Washougal's also got good schools, and I think Washougal's got great local government, and it's really remarkable that we can walk up 2 blocks to City Hall and sit down with city staff or talk to council members. And I don't know if there are many places where you can do that today, certainly not in the bigger communities. So anyway, Washougal's been great. In terms of downtown development, I I think I first got involved with some downtown revitalization efforts in about 1985. And it's interesting watching it. It's been pretty much a steady progression since then. And I can't remember exactly if Les Sonneson or Charles Crumpacker was the mayor then. But the mayor and the council were talking about how to revitalize downtown. And there were several committees and public involvement developing a vision. And really the vision's been pretty consistent over time for really a sustainable, local, vibrant downtown. And then as I look back at what's been accomplished, there's really been a lot accomplished since 1985. I think one of the first projects I was involved with was the relocation of the Two Rivers Heritage Museum, which at the time had been renting space in the Camas library basement. And first they were looking at going into where Reflection Plaza is now, but then they ended up finding space close by. We also worked with the city and helped establish Steamboat Landing, and that was really the first project that reconnected the city with the river, which was a very important thing. And we've also invested heavily in new buildings. We've taken down old buildings. We've built a new office. And we continue to invest in new technology to support our business. The Main Street project was a great project, I think, for getting a jump start on downtown Washougal. Certainly the Washougal Town Center and the work that Wes has done has been important. Captain Clark Park was developed, and the pedestrian tunnel connecting the river, or the city again, to the river has been a great project. And I love that project. I look out my office window and I see people streaming down the sidewalk and going through the tunnel, and I see all sorts of people that I never saw before. And I see children, kids on bikes, I see people walking dogs, joggers, just all sorts of people. And it's really in the morning, it's at noon, it's in the evening. It's really exceeded our expectations by 10 times, I think. So that's been a great project. As far as future development, I think I would encourage the city to stick with that vision for trying to revitalize downtown Washougal as sort of the heart of the community and look for sustainable development. I think, I don't know too much about what's going on at the Hamilton property. I think, my opinion, that would be a wonderful opportunity for really a park and again to reconnect the community even stronger with the Columbia River. And I think it's important that if there is a commercial development that goes in there, I think it's very important that doesn't compete or detract from the efforts to revitalize downtown Washougal. We've also been supportive of trying to improve the safety and the access to Highway 14. And we were supportive of the roundabout at 15th Street so that there wouldn't have to be a larger intersection or another barrier to the Columbia River. We've also talked with the city off and on for a number of years about the possibility of accessing Highway 14 from 27th Street, and we'd be very supportive of that or participating in trying to improve access there. And I think also we take a very long-term view of our business, and I think the council also should be taking a long-term view of developing downtown. And there's been a lot that's been accomplished. It seems like things are really starting to pick up momentum, and I just encourage you to stick with what you're doing and kind of nurture that development along.
Well, Charlie, we certainly appreciate your efforts and certainly from the family. For those that aren't familiar, Pendleton has obviously been a very good neighbor to have in the community, and back to really the starts of the community as well. And a lot of times we give kudos to Pendleton, the company. We probably don't give enough thank yous to the Bishop family as a family, which truly Pendleton is the Bishop family, period. For those of you that have been over to Steamboat Park, which is right across Highway 14, restrooms down there, the docks, they just get phenomenal use by both by fishermen and also by folks who just want to be down around the water. And all of that property was donated by the Bishop family. The access for the pedestrian tunnel, I think, didn't you actually have to change some plans potentially for some buildings and stuff down there to allow for a portion of that?
Oh, not really, but I mean, we worked with the city in trying to develop that.
So that, the start of that area, the parking for that we share with Pendleton with really no dollars involved for folks to be able to get to that area is just a phenomenal thing from your family, and we appreciate the continued support. Wes, thoughts from your side?
Well, on one hand, to really go through the variables, this is, a long, drawn-out discussion, and I tend to jump around to a lot of different themes, but ultimately they all come back and pull together in why I think an active, vibrant downtown is critical to Washougal's future. Again, this isn't something we got up one day and said, this looks like a good business proposition. It's something that's being done out of passion, commitment of the heart. And I think ultimately, too, as we're working through this process, I would like to see some place that Washougal truly is on board as a group with a vision, and it's a vision that's going to be supported and stood behind. Because from our perspective, again, this is taking a lot of time, effort, energy, capital. All of your studies, all your reports basically said there's nothing that pencils out in Washougal today, and that's accurate. So without having somebody step in and be willing to lose some significant sums of money to get something jump-started, we wouldn't even be able to get off the ground. But in order to continue doing that, we're also very long-term thinkers, very pragmatic in our approach, and you have to know that's truly where we're going to be going. And I share some concerns about, because I think we've seen this happen too often in this community, and I share some concerns now that the Hamilton property's been rezoned. If that, those things centered around a shopping center, they suck a lot of energy, and it's just not a big enough community and big enough area to be dispersing the energy. Somewhere, shape, or form, we got to develop some energy and let it build off of itself. And you kind of take a look. There was a little bit of a downtown here at one time. Lacamas Center got built. That kind of took about half of it out. Evergreen Marketplace got built. That was the end of it. Evergreen Marketplace has been out there 11, 12 years now. The Bi-Mart's been there about 11 years, and they haven't been able to attract a single, new business or tenant. The way these shopping centers work, you sort of hit about a 10-year span, and then you start on the down cycle. And you start rolling over tenants, and you start having vacancies. But you can go all over Clark County and look at where sort of the first, niftiest, newest shopping center was built. And those areas essentially now are some of the lowest income areas in the county. It wasn't jobs that moved in around there. It wasn't vibrancy, it wasn't activity. And that's, I keep coming back, there's a lot of economic reasons, there's a lot of quality of community, there's a lot of quality of life reasons. We need to somehow be successful in accomplishing the task of building an active, vibrant community. sometimes we'll hear we're chasing retail sales tax, but in the big scheme of your budget, it's property tax, assessed property tax values. Just the little bit we've done downtown so far has paid $1.3 million in sales tax just on the construction, and just in a block and a half, it changed the assessed or the property tax payments by $105,000 a year. And if you start looking at trying to run sewer lines, water lines, maintain roads, provide police, fire, you need, again, property tax revenue per acre.
To do that, yeah.
And this, if you take the area between 15th, now Washougal River Road, 32nd Street, there's room for probably at least $500 million worth of development in there. That's not going to occur overnight. But that's going to get Washougal a long ways into their future of what's needed for commercial building. And if you're doing it as gridded blocks, 2, 3, 4-story buildings, you're going to be receiving 4 to 10 times the property tax revenue per acre as you will on a flat shopping center type development. I think the port has a stated goal of 5 to 7 jobs an acre. I think they're averaging like 5. We're going to be hitting 75 to 125.
And you're adding more, not quite every day, but quite often. Did I see you've got another tenant for the Town Square building?
Yeah.
Attorney's office? Just one space left in the incubator building?
Yeah.
Did I see Kevin come in earlier?
Yeah, I'm back here.
There he is.
Yeah.
For those who haven't made it in yet, Kevin, do you want to stand up for a quick second? One of the owners and operators of the new R Bar downtown that opened this week.
And thanks for everybody that supported us through everything. I was able to sneak out for a quick, brief moment to stop in, but we really appreciated everything that the city's done for us, and West especially.
How are things going for your first week?
Fantastic.
Kevin, thank you for believing in Washougal.
We love it here. Yeah, it's going really well. Today was our busiest by far, and we're doing brunch tomorrow from 9 to 2, so feel free to stop in. Thank you.
I tell you what, at 7 o'clock in the morning, if you're down here, probably at 8 o'clock and at 9 o'clock now as well, while we've had some restaurants doing breakfast or Bigfoot doing breakfast, whatnot, there are some amazing smells in this downtown now, and they're mixing together well. Kevin, what brought you and Alex here?
The rivers, the beauty, the Wes and Lone Wolf being, amenable to our, situation, and what we wanted to do was really do a local, sustainable, small town restaurant, be a community hub, and this seemed to be the perfect fit for us. And we also live right in downtown as well, and so it's nice to see all of our neighbors around as well.
Can you chat a little bit about your front yard?
Well, it's slowly growing into a garden that we plan to use a lot of the produce that is grown there in the restaurant. So as much as we can grow, we will. We were able to get a lot of stuff in the ground this week due to the raise in the night temperatures. And we are growing a whole lot inside as well. We got our tomatoes and peppers going for the summer. So expect to see a lot of produce. Expect to see my partner Alex walking down the street with bundles of stuff as soon as it starts growing.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I know.
And I think, again, as we're having these discussions, and that's why it's important to have a focus and commit to an area, because the businesses we have down here, they play off of each other. They need the vibrancy. They need the activity to survive. And it's the nature of these smaller businesses that makes it interesting for this younger creative workforce. Right. All the businesses we've had move in here, they could have moved in here anytime. And I'm talking now the office people. They could have moved out to Evergreen Marketplace. They could have moved to the Crossing. They could have come to Washougal. They weren't here. Nobody started coming here as far as the white-collar workforce until there's something that represents some interest and some activity. So the barber shop, the hardware store, Main Street Mercantile, the clothing boutique, all these people help create the interest. They're all of value to our community, and they're all what's going to help make this community better, and they need to be supported.
I know sometimes we get, I get asked the question, and Wes, obviously, we've had a few opportunities to chat, but the whole, that concept of the hip, the vibrant, the urban feel, all that kind of stuff, and once in a while people ask me exactly what is that, and that's why I wanted to introduce Kevin while he was here. For those of you that haven't stopped in yet, try and find a time when they've got a couple minutes to talk to you, because you'll walk out of that place, I guarantee you, going, that's what this means. It really puts its hands around it, so.
Well, and to me, and again, that's why I said this could be a many hour discussion. There's kind of a general rule of thumb that it takes you about 10,000 hours to become highly skilled at a vocation or hobby, so to speak, music, whatever it might be. So to try and have these kind of discussions in 15, 30-minute segments,
Yeah.
because there's so many variables, they play off so many different directions, and why all the pieces need to fit together and go in a certain order and help all of us understand that and make the right decisions. It's a complex discussion. But this, when we talk about economic development, I'm not a big fan of tax credits. I've heard a quote, if a business's plan is reliant upon a tax credit, it's not much of a business plan. And even the recruitment of quote unquote businesses. What you're trying to recruit is people. You're trying to become a great community that's interesting to people. People move there, they interact with each other, they come up with ideas, they grow businesses. And you go all across this country, and there's a lot of very big companies in certain communities. They didn't get recruited there. Some entrepreneur started them in that community. I ticked off a list to somebody before. It's, Microsoft got started by some guys in their 20s. Where is it located? A few miles from where they started. Nike got started by some guys in their 20s. Where is it located? A few miles from where they started. Amazon, Apple, you go down, and you can get down to smaller companies. But you need to create an interest and a vibrancy that has creative people interested in living in your community.
David?
And the question that comes to my mind is, you mentioned a need for reassurance on the future. What reassurance do you need from us?
I think originally when we started this, the city had, and if you want, you can pass this photo around to remind people of where we were at.
Where was that?
There was, I had attended city council meetings over the years. I didn't have a business in town. I lived outside in the rural area. You kind of come through, but you look at it and it's like, this town has so much potential. We are truly the gateway to the gorge. We also, which a lot of that is, for the time being, is lost, but no community in Clark County has more lineal footage of Columbia River without it being fronted with the railroad tracks, because here the railroad tracks run behind our community. But again, majority of that's an industrial park for today. But you've got all these wonderful amenities, and the majority of our commercial development has not occurred. So we can grab hold of that, take control of it, decide who we're going to be. And we should be focused on being Washougal. You shouldn't be focused on being anybody but Washougal. You hear this all the time of where somebody wants to be Silicon Valley, or they want to be this, or they want to be, and those always fail. You can only succeed in life by being yourself. But Washougal can be an incredibly special place, and we need to grab hold of it, start putting the time, effort, and energy into understanding exactly what that looks like, exactly what it'll take to accomplish that goal, roll up our sleeves and work hard, and maybe we won't see it in our lifetimes, but we'll have planted the seeds for a really great community.
Paul?
One thing maybe you could expand on a little bit is what the original Fred Meyer in Vancouver is over at, 4th Plain and essentially Fort Vancouver Way. Isn't that about, is that what you're talking about, as a place that had been an original shopping center that was now,
Fourth and Grand?
I'm sorry?
Fourth and Grand?
Fourth,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's, kind of expand on that explanation a little bit, because, if you picture a shopping center, what you've got is a big building that's surrounded by parking,
Right.
huge parking lots. And my sense is that that's a model that people thought made sense in the 60s and are not so convinced anymore. In fact, that's being kind. That kind of retail sales tax doesn't actually sustain your community
Right.
and that what, so.
I mean, there's more and more studies coming out because if you were a business, your view of how you look at different things and long-term costs, and because you deal with appreciation, and you're sort of operating all the systems all day, every day. I gave the example to Mitch. I had been involved with an industrial facility, covered 1,700 acres. We had our own wastewater treatment, we had our own municipal water system, we had roads on there. We're looking at that as we're handling the freight related to that facility. So every minute somebody's spending on that facility, every foot they have to drive, every foot of road we have to maintain, every foot of water line, we go through agonizing evaluation because we don't want to touch that again. And we don't want to be moving it, and we don't want to have to be redoing it. And the municipal government, and it happened at our federal level too. I call it a Ponzi scheme. It was really, okay, if we get a little more revenue next year. Well, you're getting some new roads and getting some new sewer lines, water lines. Again, I'm not intimately familiar with public accounting, but in a lot of cases I don't think we're looking at depletion and depreciation. And we get a new subdivision turned over to us, so great, we got a whole bunch of impact fees. But rolling out 15, 20 years, not counting just the time in between the maintenance of the streets, the resurfacing, the repavement, all that stuff starts to wear out, and we as the community now own it. So as there's been more thoughtful analysis done of the total costs of certain types of development, you can find studies, and economists have to make assumptions, so you'll get dueling arguments based on who's representing who. But if you take a hard look at it, a lot of this does not pay its own way. And that shopping center model, there's a lot of communities now, and I wish I had the example, it was someplace back east, they had a big chunk of land that was zoned for a shopping center, big piece, like 100 acres or something. And they went through a detailed analysis, and they went and bought the land because they felt it was going to be cheaper for them over the next 50 years to have bought the land than to let the shopping center be developed.
It's true that there's kind of a rule of thumb that's talked about a lot in the municipal government community in Washington State that, yes, if you build a new house, you get a hit on the sales tax, on the construction materials, on the impact fees, and so forth. But next year, it's going to cost you $1.25 in services for every dollar of tax revenue it provides, roughly speaking. Retail is generally more attractive than that, and industrial is all over the map, depending on what the demands are. But I was just trying to get a sense of how important is kind of non-retail commercial development. How important is that in your vision? Offices.
It's kind of a chicken and egg, and if you're trying to kind of build a traditional community, the retail is smaller, the restaurants are smaller, you have more specialty stores. That creates interest. The office then feeds off of it goes both ways. That feeds off of the office and the neighborhoods and the vibrancy, the retail. The office feeds off of being in an interesting place because a lot of these companies now, they can go anywhere. So you're trying to be someplace that's interesting to your employees, and attractive, and again, this whole creative, we're doing a lot of knowledge-based work. You can't do that in a vacuum. You need to be able to interact with people. You need to be able to experience things. You need to be able to get new ideas. And so this whole interaction of walkable, local, communities is what's needed for a lot of the workforce and a lot of the higher paying jobs at this point in time. There's a company, again, it's not apples to apples, but again, I always get a kick out of reading the paper and what in Clark County where they're trying to recruit somebody. And Clark County needs to step back and why have jobs not come here? And to me, it's this lack of being able to cluster vibrancy and the whole interaction that comes with that. That's not available in Clark County. And there's a company over in Portland, took a whole block for their headquarters office building. They're leasing it. The piece of land, the one block of land, was worth $10 million more than any block in Clark County. They were willing, that's showing up in their lease. They then built a building that had all kinds of amenities, has a rooftop cafeteria and patio for the employees. It's got an atrium down through the middle to bring in natural light. Very, very expensive building. So obviously offering them a few tax credits or little incentives isn't going to get them over here. They're going to build the building and the type of building and spend the money to do it where they think they need to be to attract the kind of employees they have. And I just keep coming back. In all of my businesses, we always had a simple goal. You can just fill in the blank, but it was to be the best in the world. Our goal here should be to be the best community in the world. What that looks like, we'll figure out, but that should be the goal.
Your example about Silicon Valley too is a good one, about how everybody wants to live in San Francisco, so now those companies in Silicon Valley are busing their people.
Yeah, that's back to the kind of, again, this younger creative workforce. So, Silicon Valley developed as a major suburb. It was sort of during that time. But now that it's rolled over, all those companies down there actually have to run buses up to all these eclectic neighborhoods and stuff outside of San Francisco to pick up employees. And because of what the employees that work in those kinds of businesses can demand, that's an amenity. They now have company buses, big Google double-decker bus, driving up through these neighborhoods, picking employees up in the morning.
Other questions from council of either Wes or Charlie?
I had brought something just about this. I think I already sent it to you, Dave, but it's excerpts from various.
Thank you.
You might already have to.
Okay, thank you, Wes. Greg, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. Is that okay? Find out in a minute. You talk with a lot of folks in the community. You talk with a lot of folks who come into the community looking for properties, looking for commercial properties, retail properties, properties in general. You live here yourself. What are your thoughts on specifically on the downtown part of our community and the parts that aren't here yet but are within the boundaries? And are we doing the right things? What things do we need to put down on our to-do list?
Well, I think that we've made a lot of progress in the last couple of years. Obviously, with Hearth coming in, we needed a nice restaurant. We got it. The brew pub, the Amnesia, is a good start. Our bar is fantastic, so we don't have to go to Camas. We don't have to go to Vancouver anymore. We just stay right here and shop local and kind of live local. So from that standpoint, as a resident, I like it a lot. I sit on the board for Downtown Camas, the Downtown Camas Association, and I've seen a lot of progress that they've made. And I think that the downtown or the city council there is very aggressive They're waiving fees, permits in 4 days. I think Greg Pitcher got permits in 4 days for the Camas Hotel to be redone. I mean, that's crazy.
Well, I told him that I could get a restaurant permit in Hong Kong in 20 minutes.
So, I think Washougal's got to look at, and I know Scott's saying, permits type 1 in 28 days and 70. There's other cities that are doing better than that. So I think we need to be more competitive and more alert as to what other cities are doing. And I know that 1,000 people a month are coming into Clark County, right, from Oregon, from California. And my question would be is, what are we doing to attract them here to Washougal? And I know that we can't be everything to everybody, but I think we should have a little bit more proactive economic plan in place. And from my association with the DCA, we became part of that, Main Street program. And I think many of you are familiar with it. It's from the Department of Revenue, it's state of Washington, and it's got the organization, economic restructuring, promotion, all design, and it is a volunteer group. But I think we need to also maybe think about something like that and get the right volunteers in place, kind of make sure we do support our core downtown here. And I think to Wes's point, we as a city don't need to be focusing away from our town. We need to put all our eggs kind of in this basket, I think, and make sure this happens and this is successful. I mean, he's built it and they haven't all come yet. They're starting to, but I think now it's really important to support what we've got, and then we can kind of spread our wings a little bit more when we have that economic base. So real estate, I think, is the demand for real estate, I can see it happening. So I think that's, obviously a factor of many variables within the economy. So, but it is definitely happening. I'm seeing more and more people coming out of their home offices looking for offices. I'm seeing more companies looking for office space now. So, it's good. I've been waiting for this for a long time. So, but I think, those are kind of some of my thoughts anyway.
Your comments about our good neighbor to the west are well taken. I think what Mitch was actually getting at is the maximum amount of time we'll take on those things, but certainly I think Camas was good about following our lead when we shortened down the amount of time it takes to get permits and eliminated our fees and did all that kind of good stuff. So they learned well.
Yeah.
Joyce.
I heard something from both Mr. Hickey and Mr. Bishop regarding the Hamilton property that I would like to be a discussion. If we develop that in a commercial way and take away and drive the commercial to Highway 14 in that area, we are taking away from what's happening here, because that is exactly right on the freeway. And I don't know how much control the city has over that at this point in time, but I'd like to go back to the drawing board and look at that. I don't know where any of what Mitch talked about and what we've talked about today fits in with the strategic plan presentation that we've had, but I don't see a correlation in that. And we spent a lot of time on the strategic plan. So I would like to come back and talk about the Hamilton property and talk about development, the economic development in our city, and come back to our downtown core, because that really is who we are and where we are, and that obviously that is an issue.
Dave?
I agree. And the thing that I'm really looking for is, what do you need from us in the way of, that you would consider a reassurance that we're headed the direction that we need to go to support your efforts with the downtown area? What do you need from us? What kind of commitment? What would indicate to you that we have that commitment? Policy and direction, directive.
I'm thinking, Dave.
Okay.
Well, I mean, and again, we've gone through some bumps in the road on this process, and that's all fine. And like I said, I'm always just focused, how do we collectively, and again, it has to be something people agree on. You don't just
Sure.
mandate something, and the whole approach I've taken to this whole project. Again, I presented some ideas, the city then was headed down their path. They, again, everybody knew there was nothing financially viable. City said, okay, what would it take for you to move ahead? And at the time, what I said is to know that there's a plan and to know that we're gonna stick with it. And at the time, they, and these are non-binding or, but they'd adopted the resolution. And really that was put in place just to be a reminder to everybody that before something else happened, we've headed down a path, we've made some commitments. We want to be very pragmatic and thoughtful before we change directions.
Absolutely. And the thing that I heard that, from several people today that struck me as the most important piece of information that we're going to get today, and that is that there is not the demand to develop many areas simultaneously.
Right.
And therefore, we ought to be focusing on the downtown area.
We need a success.
To
In this
which we've
community,
already
we need,
committed.
I had another,
Okay.
which I've given to everybody all along, but I've got, people, what do we need to do? We need to believe as a community, we've kind of I always use the analogy of somebody desperate for a prom date. Anybody shows up, we take them, we need to believe we can be special. We need to believe in who we are. We need to believe we're a special community. And then nothing meaningful ever gets accomplished without just flat out working hard. We got to work hard. We got to have a few successes. We got to have some victories. And with that, we'll start to generate the energy necessary to have an active, vibrant community.
And I think we're off to a good start.
Wes has a reason to be hesitant. He certainly does. There was a resolution from a number of years ago from the council that pretty much talked about the concentration in the downtown area and not rezoning properties and that type of stuff, other commercial properties. And at the time that was put together, Hamilton was still a going mill. I don't think there was a lot of thought that was really going to be an opportunity for anything to happen out there, and it was before some other development things were suggested out that direction. But as we know, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've gone through and we've modified that resolution that allowed for the rezoning of some of the commercial areas along East Street, some of the areas along the highway and that type of stuff to accommodate those things, which took some of the meat out of that resolution that put some surety in the downtown.
And we've got, again, you're looking for seeds. And even over on East Street now, there's some sprouts. There's some facades that have been redone. There's some businesses that are taking a new look. Those are good things. But when you come again to this quote-unquote shopping center model, those are just giant energy sucks. They put in an anchor, and their whole model is it's totally dependent upon we need everybody from a big, huge radius now using this location. And then you kind of burn everybody out on it in 10 years and move to the next location. And not only is it an energy suck, but you need the little small-scale, eclectic retail restaurant shops to attract the workers. And what we really want is people being able to work in this community at good jobs. Right now, if you have a child goes through Washougal schools, graduates high school, goes away to college, where do they come back and go to work here? Safeway?
Middleton. Barely missed a beat there.
Well, and Dave, I'd say we own a lot of property in Washougal, and we're interested in seeing it eventually developed consistent with the city's vision. Right now, there's not a lot of interest from people that share that vision that have contacted us or expressed an interest. And we're interested, I think, in seeing West's investments grow and get full and be successful. And any development that goes away from the downtown is probably just going to mean it's going to take longer for the economy to really help us develop our property.
Okay. All right, now I've got a focus from both of you. Thank you.
David, we're gonna open this up. We're at 3:00, so I want to try and have us out of here by 3:30 if we can. But I want to make sure that we take some time for folks from the public as well to give us some input, the council some input, some thoughts, that type of thing. Mr. Mackey.
Just to, from what I'm understanding, just to put it in a nutshell, I find that what's going on in our downtown, Washougal, it happens on a human scale, where I feel comfortable and I feel like something that's unique going on that I can comprehend. While with these sort of anchor parking lot things, I find them dehumanizing. I don't have that same sensation of interacting, of being in a unique culture, or even cottage industry sort of, if you will, culture, which I think attracts people, while I think the other one alienates people. Maybe not completely unconscious of, but.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation, because I think there's a lot of things we're learning as humans, you know, subconsciously. And if we pay more attention to how we interact with our environment and our spaces, and you know, coming out of the industrial age, we did a lot of building in this country. And it's just, you know, it's not healthy, attractive, or anything else. And maybe we didn't understand it at the time, but I think I always ask people, go think of some place, a neighborhood, a community where you've walked and you just felt really well. And then go out to one of these shopping centers and see if you have the same feeling.
Martha.
I just was commenting to Chris here how we've come full circle, because I think a few years ago we were in this room and things were changing because the economy was in a panic, and so there were some changes made, and I think that's when you voted to change some zoning laws and extend outside of this area, and that was down. It was disheartening to those of us that were supporting Wes and his trying to do what he did. I don't think there's any city in the United States that has an angel like this that's doing this for the downtown area. I have such great respect for Mr. Hickey and appreciate him coming today and talking with us. There seems to be a little bit of an elephant in the room, and I want to make sure we're being really clear. Are we talking about the development portion that does not belong to the port, that's going to be developed by Killian? Is that the concern that I'm hearing right now, about that possibility that it could be sucking something from downtown Washougal? I just want to be clear on that.
Well, I think it's potentially both pieces, both what is controlled by Killian today and what's controlled by the port as well.
Because I don't think there's not everyone here knows what that is, so I just wanted to put it out there. It's going to be an elephant. Let's look at all the pieces of it, and be really clear about the communication process with the port and how they're working with that developer to try to make that not happen. Not that they can promise that, but I think that communication is happening, if I'm understanding, and you probably can speak to this.
It may be from the port to the other private developer.
Right.
One of the things that's been, for myself, has been a little bit discerning is that we as a city have tried to be very proactive in approaching the port and the Killians both in being involved in those discussions so that we can help shape and or understand and or whatever our appropriate role is with that. And I can tell you to this day, those phone calls are not returned.
From the port?
From the port or the Killians, either one.
So they need to know that from the public.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that they don't know that, because we remind them often that we are very prepared and very interested to do that. Now, on the other side, I think one of the comments from either Wes or Adam in a meeting we had a couple weeks ago is probably appropriate coming out of those. If the individuals up on that side don't necessarily want to necessarily have the city folk involved in theirs, maybe that again underscores our role in the downtown and in developing it and concentrating on it. We're not going to give up on pushing out there on those properties, because if those are to develop, and I think we all knew that they were going to at some point, given the other things that have happened out there over the last few years. But we want to make sure that what happens out there are appropriate to those properties and do not take away from taking things out of the downtown.
What would that be?
That's part of what we hope to have discussions with to work through those.
Keep coming back to these themes of dream big. You know, I've got to say anything that can't be imagined can't be accomplished. You got to be able to imagine. And when you're looking at the roads, when you go around and look at some analogies of how different uses impact different things. And again, I know Portland's a totally different ballgame, and that's not who or what we're trying to be. But it's a place where there's some examples that people have been in, so you can use it. You know, because there's talk of trying to basically widen this road and off ramps and interchanges and everything else. Every other community in the country right now is trying to figure out kind of how to reclaim their waterfront, and if they could get rid of a major highway, how to get rid of it. You know, and if you go over to Portland, you've got I-5 on the one side of the Willamette River. You got Tom McCall Waterfront Park on the other side of the river. Which side of the river developed the most? Which side of the river has the highest assessed property taxes? Which has the most jobs? You know, so the idea that a park can't create jobs is not true. A park can create jobs, and a park can affect the assessed property values over your entire community. So you know, I had a discussion with a port person, and you know, they looked at me like I was a lunatic, but you know, but also they did not have a argument. You know, it's, you know, bring an economist in here, a neutral economist, and I believe they'll be able to show you that the majority of that being a signature waterfront park would do more for the long-term economy of this community than, because also the thing you read in the paper, and again, the stuff we're doing here, you hear the term won't pencil. Well, I know what'll pencil out there right now, not much, and what will pencil isn't going to be a benefit to this community in the next 50 years. So if all we're ever going to accept is what will pencil for the developer on a given day, we're never going to get much.
It's not going to be what we want. Steve?
I'm going to take off in a few minutes with my child, but I don't want to leave without saying the reason I came here is because I embrace the vision of downtown that's happening here. I'm not accustomed to being negative, but I will say I went to Safeway the other day and it had a frantic feel to it. It was not pleasant at all. I avoid that store whenever I can. There's good people who go there and good people who work there, but the model doesn't work for me. I don't want it. I don't like it. And when I heard that there might be another opportunity for shopping, my heart sank. I'm here just to let people who make decisions know that where my priorities are. And they're at a human scale, and I don't care how long it takes, and I'm willing to pay for it. I don't want it free. I'm willing to pay for it because I value it, and she'll be able to ride her bike everywhere, to the places, you know, long before she gets a car, because it'll be a human scale community, and that's what I want. That's what I'm here.
Appreciate that. Thoughts from other folks in the audience? Questions? Yes.
Question. Up here on the map, the TC and C in the East Village, those big areas, are those, any of them zoned residential, or are they all commercial, industrial?
The town, actually all of them, every district allows residential.
My thoughts on a potential idea, I have lived abroad numerous times in different countries and have seen, of course, the examples where you have everything stacked on each other with the businesses down below and residential's above. I know lots of this downtown area, a lot of the homes, many of them don't have so much money, and that a lot of our newer homes that people are coming into the city are built up on the hills and away, and they're driving there, and then they're driving away from town to take their business elsewhere. I worked downtown Camas at Twilight for nearly 5 years, and I was shocked. Every day people would come and say they never heard of it, they didn't come downtown, they'd go and eat in Vancouver and Portland. And I feel that maybe if we bring some of those nicer homes, residential areas, whether it's townhouse or you know, around the dog park, I mean, that's a great park there, something to bring maybe residents with more money down here who would enjoy the walking and such. That'd be my idea.
Well, I guess what the important thing to remember is that the town center designations don't preclude that from occurring. That can happen. It's just a matter of who's going to make that happen and who's going to come in, and it doesn't foreclose that dream of occurring. And I don't know, Wes, how much you want to share, but your other projects that you had initially when we were first starting before the economy, I mean, he had approvals for live work downtown here, with retail on the bottom, apartment condos on top, on multiple locations downtown. It's just, unfortunately, the economy went the wrong way, but that still can occur. It doesn't
Well,
foreclose that dream.
Ideally, if we're successful,
Yeah.
meaning we, with the vision, that's what you want. And again,
Right.
for today, it's all a giant catch-22 because, like I said, the projects we're doing right now don't pencil out. You're investing in the future. And with the live-work situation, a lot of times the people living in those apartments want what I call quote-unquote urban amenities. And that's that I can park my car, that I can walk down the street, go to the coffee shop, get something to eat. So you kind of have to build up that base before the living part of it becomes attractive to people that would be willing to pay the rent for a brand new structure.
Sure.
I would just say, I think given the current zoning and what I understand of it, it might be precluded if we get the size of commercial in there that is allowed. So it's not enough, from my view, living downtown to have a vision, which is beautiful, and if we can share the vision and work toward it. But it really also takes vigilance to not allow, and we've talked a little bit about it in Hamilton and with what could pull us off, but even in the East Village there, some of what could develop would preclude that kind of quality of life. And unless we really take action steps, and unless you know that we as a community really support this village style core living, and you can take steps that we will support to limit what could be done in an unwatchful hour in the east side there. Not to mention the other places you've talked about. But it's not enough to have the vision. We really have to not do and not allow some things that I would call even predatory. Because they do sneak in, and they seem like, as you've talked about, they seem like good financial ideas at the time. So I think the community here is it's touching to see how much we have all just deeply appreciated the growth in downtown Washougal.
Thank you, Sherry. Larry?
I'm very encouraged to hear Mr. Hickey's comments about the whether it be park, greenway, or walking trails through the Hamilton property or along the dike, and the waterfront area to keep the waterfront open to the general public. Over the last few months, I've been giving a lot of information to the port in regards to the economic benefits of trails through our city that will benefit the livability of the community. Let's get the community to, as Mr. Hickey says, a vibrant place for people who want to come here and live. If they want to live here, that will bring the jobs in. I think that, I can see as Martha brought up, there could be a potential issue if we don't get involved with the port. We have a good line of communications with the port commissions, but let's work on this together as a team and keep the goal of the community focused and not, what a developer thinks is good for our community right now. That is, I think, where we should put our efforts now. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Yep. Not to change gears a little bit, but going back to what Greg was saying about the Downtown Camas Association, I guess my question or comments would be directed towards Mr. Hickey and any other business owners in downtown, and Mr. Bishop. Is there an interest for a downtown association currently in Washougal from local business owners at all? Yes? Yes? Fantastic. Okay, so what is being done about that? Is there a group of you getting together, or how is that coming about?
We started to get together back when Drink was still
seemed like there was a need for us, so we all just kind of dropped off.
Okay. Yeah, that's something I could definitely get behind, the idea of that. I see that as being very strong in Camas. They get a lot done. They also, the Main Street program is fantastic, and I've actually been through the training program with that. And there's a lot of benefit to businesses that contribute to a downtown association that commits to a Main Street program. There's tax benefits for donations, and you know, just the fact that it brings people downtown for social events and activities and things throughout the year. And I just see that as kind of lacking, especially recently. So
somebody had their hand.
Yes, go ahead.
Joseph Briggs, just like to say a couple things. I perhaps have the unique perspective of growing up in Camas. When my wife and I got married, we bought a house in Washougal. We had business in downtown Camas with the Downtown Coalition for a while, and now I'm in west of Space. I think we have about 1,700 square feet or so. Second floor, just above the new restaurant. And just a couple points, like from the city's perspective, I don't want to speak for Wes, but I think what I would like to see is some focus in what we're doing, so that we're not getting distracted. I have 8 kids, so I sometimes feel like we get the squirrel kind of mentality. You don't have to quote Pixar, but I've seen that happen in my lifetime in these communities, where we start on one thing. It's been the library, it's been the community center, it's been a number of things, and we're dodging around here. But with that comes the realization that really the city can only do 2 things. You can get in the way of economic development, or you can help it. But even going back to Camas, the DCA wasn't really the driving factor. It was a few business owners, excuse me, building owners, that remodeled their spaces. And then with that came activity. So we have this kind of unique opportunity here where we have an investor that is willing to put up with the duration of time to make this happen. And so what does that economic development look like? I was in Camas, my partner was in Vancouver. I worked out of my office, which is just on the other side of the orange space there by Hathaway Park. We decided to find a space in Washougal so that I could walk to work. We rode my bike, or our bikes here today. So what economic development looks like to me is we now have a space to go work at. There's 9 people in our building right now. I think we're planning on adding some. But 2 of those, one lived in Woodland, one lived in Vancouver. Both of them are now moving to Washougal. So that, and they weren't moving because of city's plans. They're moving because it's more convenient for them to work here. They like being here. They like being able to go to the restaurants. So to the extent what we're talking about here is not having committees and the best laid plans. It's having a commitment to a community, and that's people. That's me seeing the people below me, above me, around me, and being able to interact with them. My kids being able to come down and visit me at the office. So I don't want us to lose sight of that. And then lastly, we're talking about buildings and permitting, and most small business people aren't building buildings right now. I mean, it's untenable and unnecessary. So I would hate to see a focus on fast-tracking permits, because even fast-tracking, you know, there can be problems. And we're talking about, hey, let's waylay these guys, let's fast-track at the same time. So let's just have a thoughtful purpose to what we're doing and stick to the plan. And when these ancillary ideas come up, let's just compare them with what do we want? Do we want a community? Does it contribute to that? Then maybe we talk about it. If it doesn't do that, and it's not to the point, then maybe we need to put that on the back burner, or at least give it its due consideration, but certainly don't make it a priority. So again, we have a few people. 2 of them are moving here now. We've expanded, and we didn't have to be in Camas, or we didn't have to be in Washougal. We didn't have to be in Vancouver, but we chose to work here, in large part, frankly, due to the building where we're at. We're in the new Main Street building. It's LEED Gold. it's walkable, all those things we've talked about. So when we talk about cars, I hear parking problem, that mystifies me. If you go to a mall, there's no parking spot near the building. There's no parking spot anywhere in Washougal that's any further away than any mall where we could shop at. So some of that comes to perception. So when we start meeting as a city and saying we have a parking problem, that gives merit to the fact that we have a parking problem. And we don't have a parking problem. It may be inconvenient once a month, but great, we should applaud that. You know, we have 2 people that have giant parking lots that they're willing to let us use in those off times. Let's not get abstracted by this notion of a parking problem. Let's stay focused on, hey, we have a parking delay a couple times a month, and let's be happy about it. But let's stay focused on continuing to build a community.
Thank you.
We do have a bit of a parking problem though, because we've got one of the small lots right in the downtown core. And a lot of the businesses, a lot of the customers are coming to our lot to park, unfortunately. And it doesn't leave any room for our customers or the Chinese cafes to park.
Okay, so that's fair. We should get some signage because people are taking advantage of your parking. But the city as a whole doesn't have parking.
No problem, too small.
Yes.
I just have a couple comments and maybe a question or two. My name is Ryan Morrison. I might be one of the newest residents here. I've been in the area for only about 18 months now. I'll tell you what originally kind of attracted me to this area. I work in Bingen every day, so I commute over an hour each way. And originally I was interested in Camas mostly because of the image that people outside of the Washougal city have of Washougal. Once I came down here and really drove around, and the biggest selling point for me was finding the land that I wanted. I live outside the city limits in the rural area, but I was just kind of curious what the plans are for kind of trying to reshape the image of Washougal that other people, say down the gorge, might have. I mean, you talk to people in the Hood River area, and you mention Washougal, and they all kind of, ooh, Washougal. But you know, there's a lot of us that, or I shouldn't say a lot. There's quite a few of us that work for In Situ that do live in Washougal, and we do deal with that commute every day because we like it here. And I like the vision that you guys have for downtown, and I think it's really good, and I think it'll help attract more people. But I think part of that will be doing more like broad community events and really trying to advertise. I guess further out, you know. I guess what I'm asking is, are there any plans to have more events in the downtown area and say advertise further out and more out toward the gorge and convince people, hey, come down here, come check out this event we're doing in downtown Washougal, and tour the community and see what it's like. And I think a lot of people would be more attracted to move here, like I was when I really decided to not listen to anybody else, and I wanted to see Washougal for myself. And I absolutely love it here. I'm really hoping to someday open a business here myself and eliminate that commute, but we'll see how that goes in the future. So.
Excellent. Welcome to the community.
Thank you.
There are some discussions from a number of different sources and individuals on events in the downtown, and some of those structured around the types of businesses that they're in and that type of thing as well. So hopefully we'll be actually successful in bringing those folks together. Some of them don't necessarily want to hone in on each other. So, and then as well, even the bigger picture is trying to identify exactly where we can do that in the downtown, that it works well for the community itself. There are also some things that want to go out to the port area, which is fine as well. Completely different events and want to be out there for particular reasons. So it'd be interesting at some point to know what some of those things are that folks in a Hood River or somewhere may have in their mind when if they have that impression about Washougal. You know, somebody would ask, why do we get that kind of reaction, and what backs it up?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you know, when I talk to people that grew up in like the White Salmon and Hood River area, when I was renting in Hood River, there just seems to kind of be this like negative image that Washougal is like, oh, that's where the methers live, and you know, it's like this low income. And you know, when I originally, you know, my biggest reason for leaving the gorge is I wanted land. I've always grown up in the city. I moved up here from Reno, and I wanted property, and I couldn't afford it out there, and I could in the country out here, and that's what really initially drew me to this area. A lot of people down the gorge say Camas. You know, Camas has the best schools, and you know, has this charming downtown, and you know, stay away from Washougal. It's all trailer parks and garbage. And I mean, I hope I'm not offending anybody by saying that. But that's just that's the image that's coming out of you know some of the crusty trustees down in the river in that area. And but I think, like I said, I think if you can have events and attract people in here, you know, it can really help reshape the Washougal image that some of the other people within an hour's driving distance have of the area.
Can I ask you a question? How did you hear about this meeting?
I was paying my physical therapy bill in Steve's office. That was going to be kind of another comment of mine, is increasing kind of public awareness. You know, I mean, I would not know anything about it unless I happened to see the sign hanging in Steve's office. And in fact, I was talking to Shelby and Lee at a beer at a time, and it's like, hey, are you guys going to that meeting? And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So if I could suggest in the future, maybe try and disperse the knowledge out there, you know, outside the court, advertise these a little bit more.
Joyce?
What kind of event could Washougal have that would draw people from the gorge into our town?
I think, you know, it seems like in this area, you know, some kind of like, I know like a beer garden or like a whatever they have in like in Portland, right? The big beer tasting events and things like that. I mean, again, being new to the Northwest, it kind of seems like this is like the beer capital of the country right now, and you see, I don't know, some of the things that attract people to like Hood River, right? They go on these gorge like brew tours, and like they want to go check that out. I think having Amnesia come in is a really great thing. Having like Railside come in was a really great thing. Shelby revamping the tap room into what it is really attracts a lot of business. So I just think community oriented events, you know, concerts, and you know, even having like a brewers, some kind of small scale brewers festival. I'd really like to see more like farmers markets. You know, just get the people from the country that are growing these, you know, these great vegetables and everything, bring them out here and let people walk around. And I think, I don't know, those are just some of the things that I would really like to see, and that would attract me more towards downtown. One thing that kind of takes me away from
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but a lot of times we get in these situations and everybody's got ideas.
Right.
Are there any of these that you're willing to take the lead on?
Or you and your coworkers that live here as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I would love to be part of the committee. For me, time is very, very hard. But yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't know necessarily about taking the lead. I mean, being so new to the community, and honestly, this is the first city council meeting I've ever been to in my life, so it's all still kind of new to me. But yeah, I'm definitely interested. Like I really, really like Washougal. I love it here, and that's why like I want to stop working for my company and start working for myself, and I want to make it happen in Washougal. So.
Got to be careful about what you like, though. Have you met Jim Lambo up there?
Jim Lambo? I have not.
In situ? He's, I believe he's still your vice president of procurement. He worked for this other small airplane company called Boeing for 24, 25 years and decided, you know what, I want out of that. I'm going to go down and work for this little company down there, and this is cool. I'm out of Seattle. I'm in White Salmon, and a year later, Boeing bought him.
Right.
Now he's back with them again. So. Shannon.
I just wanted to second everything that you just said, because that was pretty much what I was going to say. And I would be happy to work with you or take the lead or partner up on making some of those things happen. I think that I'm a real estate agent, and part of my goal is I'm brand new here too. too. I just moved here in September, so I've only been around for about 9 months, and I've been watching. And I think that as a community, what's going to bring people here to live, what's going to bring the money in to buy the property that we want to have here is having a vibrant community and activities like this, like street fairs and just community events where we can bring our kids out, petting zoos, I mean something silly that's small that maybe the opening day parade that was going to happen and then it all got moved down to Judson Park. That was fantastic to see business owners out, to see booths out, to get information from the dentist, to see everybody connecting with each other. Fantastic. And so I think that those are definitely items that need to happen more often, and I'm on board to help out. So. Yeah.
2 people can be a committee. Paul?
Real quick, funny you should ask, because first weekend in June, the Lions are arranging a pub run. They will raise money for, as the Lions do, for glasses for people who can't afford them. But it is about a 4-mile route that includes Railside and Amnesia and Beard of Time and a couple of other places. I don't have a lot of details off the top of my head, but that's happening, and we will try to get the word out on that. You probably know more about Lions than I do.
Yeah, they're still trying to put it together. It's Washougal Lions that are working on it, and they're still crafting it as we speak. So the date is set for June 8th, though. Pardon?
It's all available online. You can register for it. It's all set up.
Okay. So Washougal Lions online. And then I wanted to ask Wes something, kind of. Do you think it's important that we have a downtown park? If we could figure out a way to create a downtown green space, in addition to Reflection Plaza, do you think that's a key piece?
Yes. I mean, a lot of times in these downtown efforts, and this can be coming back to focus, the most valuable time we have, or most valuable thing we have here on earth is time. And we can't do everything, we can't be everything, so you got to try and accomplish a goal and figure out to focus. A lot of times on these downtown type revitalization projects, there's a list of maybe 25 items, and that list is always going. Something's falling off the bottom, something's on the top, and it ranges from small things to, we're talking about signage and flower baskets, to banners, to big things like a pedestrian path under the highway. And I think we need that. And we need to, every week, every day, we need to be looking at that and see what we can do. If we're planning on being successful, which we should plan on being, more people are going to want to live down here. You will get live-work housing, but they're not going to be interested in being here if they don't have a park. And somewhere, shape, or form, I brought this up before, the park land that appears to be parks right now is all private land.
Right.
And so as we're planning, as we're figuring out, as we're looking at how successful we're going to be, because we know we are, then yes, we need a park.
I was just thinking about how important Esther Short Park had been down to the revitalization of downtown Vancouver. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention, it's really a subject for another conversation, is Blaine Peterson, who's president of the school board, is here. And so my question for us to all begin to think about is, the school district is the other really large player in the community on the public sector. So what kind of partnerships do we need to develop that do not exist, or relationships, or how can the district and the city work together to support this vision of Washougal as being the place where people want to live, work, and play? But especially, how can we get together on creating that kind of synergy? And as I said, that's a conversation for another day, but I really would like to start thinking about it.
I'd like to just throw something out, just that question. Living downtown, I know one thing that I would love to see in cooperation with the school district, is a transportation and walking and biking plan to access our schools so that children who live really closely, as lots of them do, actually walk and bike. Because right now there's buses that will take you 2 blocks. And if we cooperated together, we really could, I mean, kids could be walking.
Actually, a quick question related to that. Part of the reason my kids don't come to visit me is one of the main arteries, I think it's 20th Street, coming into downtown, doesn't have a sidewalk.
Today it doesn't.
So there's a plan, that was my question, there's a plan to get us a sidewalk.
Yeah, actually, Tuesday morning I'll be in front of the county commissioners, hoping that they approve the community development block grant proposals that are in front of them for their ratification. And in that is money for a sidewalk and a safe haven area on East Street, that type of stuff, to get right into the downtown.
And that's coming across the
20th, yes.
20th across the
Yep.
track.
And if that doesn't happen, we don't get that grant, then what happens?
I think actually if it doesn't happen, we're still prepared from a city standpoint to come in and try and do something just a little bit less than that with our own funding. Other thoughts from other folks who haven't had a chance to speak up yet?
Well, I have a few words to say. This is the first city council meeting that I've ever been to, and I'm not really familiar with speaking to the public. But I'm a hometown girl, and I just wanted to say I'm really happy with seeing the changes, but being on the streets for the last 3 months, I see lots of rubbish. There's a new council for the homeless in Vancouver, and they are shipping their people over here, which I believe that's what was some other people's concern, seeing lots of vagrants, unsavory sort of characters where he doesn't feel safe going shopping safely with his children. Well, I'm not too far from them, but that's a whole nother issue as far as family. But I've left the nest and I've been gone for about 40 years, and I've come home. And what I see makes me very happy in Washougal. I haven't been here for a long time, so I really don't know anybody else's perspective. Some of the terminology I don't understand. Your referral to the port as being separate, I don't understand that. I do not know what Parkersville means, but me being someone coming in from overseas and coming home, this is my home. My grandfather worked at the Camas paper mill for nearly 50 years. What Washougal means to me is Pendleton War Mills. That is my life. Fiber arts, wools, artistry. It reaches all the way back to before we were even here. I don't know how, I'm trying to hurry and try to condense what I mean to say. Your museum is cramped into a teensy tiny little building, and they charge you to walk in. There is no galleries here. There are, I really don't know how to put it. But from what I see, someone needs to get out of their cars and walk the streets. The railroad company, in particular, even though they restrict trespassing on their property, there is more vagrants living on that property, and there is the worst collection of trash I have ever seen. I don't know if the property at the port is separate. I only saw the Parkersville National Historical Site sign today. I don't understand that as a separate entity. I do know that that is not Parkersville. And something should be redone as far as, it's a national historical site here. People don't understand the importance of our history here. It's not about buildings. It's about the land. It's about the landmarks. It's about how these communities were started here. It's a wonderful thing they've done down there at the port. I'm happy with all the signs, very informative, lots of pictures. There could be some modifications on that, but sitting here for my very first council meeting, listening to what you all had to say, although I can't really follow, because, you know, after all, it is my first council meeting. As far as town improvements themselves, Pendleton Woolen Mill has the largest parking lot. Pendleton Woolen Mill is what, to me, made this little town thrive the way it has and expanded. This is paradise to me, and there's no place like home. There's not much money. I don't really know the terminology you would use for that. There's not much money to speak of really big developments, but I've been walking the streets. The first thing you see when you pull off the highway and you pull into town is a derelict house there on the corner, and it's been there for years. You go to the post office, stand there on the street and look at it. It needs cleaned. It's filthy. Our post office itself, I'm sure people pull in off the street and use that post office. Even where you park your bike, that needs to be painted. Then you look across the street and it's like, okay, is there some sort of a barrier here? Who is not seeing what I see? I have worked every single day for hours, even at night. This is my home. And I came home to have a look around, and I have been working very hard, picking up lots of garbage everywhere. So that's why I'm here. I want to volunteer for some sort of group to start picking up rubbish. And as far as funds or borrowing money for any kind of expansion, I think that we should go back to the core, which to me is Pendleton Woolen Mills, and go from there. Because that's fascinating. That's interesting. People, when I go to the Gorge, I go to museums. I go to Maryville Museum, Stonehenge. We already have those National Historical Site signs. And what I've seen down there at the port is really a good thing. For instance, the little tunnel from the Pendleton Woolen Mill underneath the highway there. Those just, what's been done there is really wonderful. That's really nice, informative, artistic. It goes back to historical things. That's what we like about here. That's what I like about here. We live in a very special place, and I hope it stays very special for a long time.
Thank you. Molly?
I'll just say something really quickly because I know we're well past our time, but I know you talked about a lot of ideas about events and farmers markets and things like that, and I would like, since we have a lot of interest in the room, to say, and since I've been on City Council in previous years, that a lot of these issues are really community driven. That means all of us. And so there has to be an interest and a swelling up of individuals within the community to make these things happen, and then city government would act to enable us, possibly, to allow that, if it's within the code. So I would love to see a lot of the same things, but we can't ask our city government to do them all for us. So we need to remember to work with city government, work with the staff of the city and the council to make those things happen. And it's pretty obvious from today that there's enough interest in this room to make some of those things, plant the seed for some of those.
Thanks, Molly. Any last items from folks? Again, I appreciate everybody coming out today, especially on such a nice day. We will follow up at a staff level and see how we can round some of the conversations that have happened today and take those into a second gathering and see if we can't move some of these things forward. At the same time, still continue to hear feedback and hear what works and hear what we need to work on. Thank you all very much.
I'll end with a little levity.
Yes.
My fortune earlier this week was, this week your lucky day is Saturday. and enjoy the fun.
I just want to add that all of us, staff, electeds, we would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from you. So buttonhole us at Safeway or wherever you happen to see us. Call, write, anything.
I just wanted to let you know